Hello. Hello, I'm Dr. Paula Petry, and welcome. I look forward to this time to share with you about our pineal gland and it being an aspect of our divine design. I came into this life, a very deep spiritual life, place of knowing that there's an interconnected world source of energy that we live in and source from. And through my daughter's death. And it was almost this insatiable quest of wanting to know where we go when we die. And it led me to an experience which really gave me pause. And I then began to look at the science and having more and more experiences of the true nature of who we are. And part of what gives us this nature, this ability to connect up into the, let's say, the cosmos or the source energy is the pineal gland. And it's been known throughout history as being the bridge and the conduit and giving us the ability to have these enlightened cosmic experiences. Simple as feeling this calm oneness, at peace with self, yeah, that we've all had, hopefully, yeah, to more of a blissful, more sparkle dust and glitter and wonder, right, as we journey inward and maybe our eyes are closed and we have this sense of oneness, of connection. Again, very deep and feeling at peace. Well, part of how that is all possible comes through this tiniest of glands, the pineal gland, the size of a grain of rice. And its function, its history, its meaning throughout time is quite fascinating. So we're going to take a look at that through some interesting slides I put together. So let's begin. And here we are. And there we go. And we begin here. The divine design, I do believe we are divinely designed. And this is one aspect of it. And this is a little bit more about myself. Inner explorer. If you're listening right now, you are an inner explorer by listening. And this was a sweat lodge, Native American sweat lodge, and spent several years in a beautiful monthly ceremony in sweat lodge. A quote that represents this interconnectedness of love, the life, the web of life, very well spoken by Native Americans, well lived and spoken. It says, like stones in the same river, the ripples meet and remind us that all of us are connected. Pineal gland, as I said, it's very, very tiny, the size of a grain of rice. It's attached to the third ventricle in our brain. We have 4 of them. They're like empty cavities described as such, but aren't really. And it's attached to the roof of the third. Interesting to note then that it is in the bloodstream that can get exposure because of that, of 2 toxins. Fluoride is considered one of the toxins. If you have too much fluoride in your body, it can lead to the early calcification of the pineal gland. Inside the gland itself is calcite crystals, which makes it a bit mysterious. Functions. We didn't know its function in modern medicine until 1958 and discovered that it produced the melatonin. And melatonin help regulate our sleep-wake cycles. We have a natural circadian rhythm. When our retinas see light in the daytime, boom, it's time to wake up, and it becomes dark, and the melatonin is released at that time, and it helps us to calm and go to sleep. When we are dysregulated for whatever reason, and I give, honor to those whose work schedule is inverted, and there is significant study that shows the ill effects of that on the mind and body. So we want a regulated a circadian rhythm. And if not, these are some of the things that listed there that can happen. Sleep disorders, the mood dysregulation, mental health, neurodegenerative diseases. As we go through, you'll see why that could be so. Melatonin is released, as I said, when the sun goes down, and serotonin. So the light, wherever I'm living, I've moved a lot. I always have a window facing the east, and there I am. I peek out, maybe not outside, but out through the window, and expose my retinas to the light of day, the natural light of day. And that turns on the serotonin. So what is melatonin in the evening is serotonin in the daytime. Melatonin also acts as an antioxidant. We can use all of that because we know we have so much exposure. And there's harmful free radicals that end up kind of accumulating in our system, and it helps with that. Just normal, it can be producing its normal amount, and with age, it is a less amount that it produces. Going back to what was said earlier, we have these associations now, not known to be causes, but associations of the levels of melatonin and different disorders. So with eating disorders, there's associated changes in the levels of melatonin in the body. A panic syndrome, the melatonin levels were too high at night. Interesting, right? We want it, but we don't want it too high. And people with OCD, the melatonin are low at night. Increased melatonin improved dementia-related changes in depression, anxiety, and apathy. So we see how it is associated as and is a mood regulator. It's good to be tested if you really feel off on your cycle and you can't get it back in rhythm, because if you are off too long, or for whatever reason, you could be secreting melatonin in the morning and not at night. So actually, like at 9 a.m., you're dragging instead of having the serotonin in your system, which would it's like a happy chemical. So it's good to look at your cortisol, your melatonin levels as it relates to your circadian rhythm. So it does more than even the serotonin and the melatonin. It releases GABA, which relaxes us and reduces anxiety. The pineal is an antidepressant. And actually, we know that we have traces of DMT in our bodies. That's the hallucinogenic. And we know that the pineal gland in rats actually excretes DMT. So there's being studied about DMT and the pineal gland. It does create this curiosity of how that is related to these kind of this blissful experiences that one can have on this path of I guess towards enlightenment, or towards this heightened connection with the source energy, with God, and so forth. So the DMT is of interest in these studies. Another aspect of the pineal gland and spiritual meaning comes through the symbolism of a pine cone. And I loved pine cones so much after I learned about it that I brought this one all the way from Italy. It looks fake. It's so hard and it's so big. It's so beautiful. But on the underside, you see the spirals going clockwise, 13 going to the left. When you divide the 13 by the 8, you get the golden ratio, which is 1.6. And that golden ratio is found in other organs in the body and is considered like the perfect of proportions, and is also found in nature. So we have the kind of maybe a reason for the pineal gland being so associated with the pine cone. And we see it in throughout different traditions. So in ancient Egypt, we see Osiris's staff having the pineal gland at its top. When we look at ancient records and descriptions of our energy body, which we can't really capture yet on film or through any other means, but it's true for people who work with energy and their energy bodies. And there is a central channel coming up the spinal column, and there's two smaller ones running alongside. And then the pineal gland is here on top. And we'll talk about that as it relates to activating the pineal gland using the rise of the natural energy flow that we have in our bodies. And I believe it could be seen as represented here with the staff and the serpents and the pine cone. In Hinduism, also sacred art, with Shiva is the most prominent god and is depicted with a head or coiled hair that could be seen as the pineal gland, and also sometimes holding a pine cone in an outreached hand. Here, imagine this religious site is 4 times the size of the Vatican, if you've ever been, which is huge. And we see that the top, like pointing us to God, to Source, to the power of all that is in the shape of a pine cone. And it was built as a Hindu temple and then later dedicated to Vishnu and converted to Buddhism. But obviously that symbolism holds true for both of those religions. Assyrian art, look at how beautiful, holding a pine cone, pointing it, potentially pollinating, representing eternal light, life, enlightenment. So we can see how how we maybe access that source energy and can also give it or send it out. We think of ancient healers and current practitioners. We access that source energy that is within us, and we send it, and it is with the right hand typically. The left we receive. And we know that there's more heat that comes from the right hand, kind of a recent science discovery. So we have the right hand and the use of the pine cone representing perhaps energy itself. The Greek culture, pine cones appear on Thyrus's staff, on the staff of Dionysus, and there we have it here. And he was the male god of fertility, wine, and pleasure. Beautiful Roman fountain, bronze, that sits in a niche inside the Vatican now, and it's quite obvious that it is a pine cone that is 4 meters high. In the Roman culture, the pine cone was associated with Venus and the goddess of love. So we think of the love source energy of God represented through Venus and represented by the pine cone. This is my photography, and in Italy, in a church I most love is 14th century Christian art. And I got closer and closer, and it was like, that is a pineal gland. I mean, that is a pine cone. The only time ever I've seen a pine cone being held by Mother Mary. So we see the traditions of how they continue to hold true, even though they're not so spoken directly about. So there's Mother Virgin Mary holding a pine cone. And again, in her right hand. Yeah. So, yeah, interesting, right? In the right hand. Pope. And also here on the staff is the pineal gland and many other representations of that within the Catholic Church associated with spiritual illumination. It gets even more interesting because of its association with the third eye, and appears in Buddhism, and it is associated with the ability to achieve enlightenment, to understand the true nature of reality. Higher levels of consciousness and insight is the pineal gland associated with the third eye. And when you look here at the third eye, you see in Hinduism, the third eye, the mark, the red mark on the forehead. And if we go straight back from the third eye, right above the eyebrows, we're back into that area of the pineal gland, here to here, and this being the pituitary. The Eye of Horus is Egyptian as well, and this is a very typical depiction of the Eye of Horus on and this is an example on a papyrus. And here, if we look at the inner structure of the brain, we see this same exact shape with the pineal gland being inside that third ventricle. The Eye of Horus, why is that important? And what does it have to do with enlightenment and love and God and healing, right? Because in the mythology, in the myth, as the myth goes, the Egyptian god Horus lost his left eye in battle with his brother. So it was his left eye, and it was damaged or taken out, we say, in battle with his brother. But along comes Thoth, and he heals the third eye, his left eye. So Horus's left eye is healed. And so we have the Eye of Horus as being a symbol of protection, healing, and wholeness. And where that is positioned is very similar to what we see of the structure of the brain. The Eye of Horus. More recent history, René Descartes was a famous philosopher who really was one of the first explorers of human consciousness. And he asserted that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul. That was his conclusion. And his studies of the brain anatomy, the pineal gland, and how it had been positioned throughout time as it related to higher levels, more connection with the divine, higher levels of consciousness. So it gets even more interesting, right? So we know serotonin during the day, melatonin at night. GABA helps us relax and reduces feelings of anxiety. We have the pineal line. It affects our mood and how we think. These are other chemicals that are released by the pineal gland. acts as an antidepressant, powerful oxytocin that we looked at. And also the DMT traces amounts in the human body. So just as a reminder, all of this neurochemistry and oneness and bliss are associated. So we ask the question, can we activate the pineal gland? Why the pineal gland? Why is it is so strongly associated with this heightened sense of oneness, of connection, of inner peace, of being held, being loved, of not being alone, being the sense of togetherness, connection. Joe Dispenza is very modern, current author and speaker, healer, healing programs. Talks much about the pineal gland and activating it. And it is through this, it could be, so this is my experience, and it goes back to our channels of energy, understanding that at the base of the spine, it sits our energy, core energy, at the base of our spine, and that with breath we can bring that energy up, and it can reach and put pressure onto the pineal gland. How is that? Because we have another aspect of the where the ventricles, what they do in the third ventricle, we have a spinal fluid that is excreted from the ventricles, and it runs down. We know this for sure. We measure it, see it, the spinal column. So we have a spinal cord, we have the spinal column. And this fluid from the brain cavities comes down the spinal column and protects it it comes down the spinal cord, between the spinal column, the spinal cord, and protects the spinal cord and does other things. The fluid itself has a high level of protein in it. So when we're doing breath work and we're moving this energy and this force energy up, we also could very possibly be moving not only the subtle energy body, but also affecting the fluid that runs down, up and down the spinal column. So as we're breathing in and in again and in again, and we'll do that more in a minute, we can imagine that this fluid rises and does activate the pineal gland. And potentially then it could be releasing higher levels of all of those good chemicals, as well as potentially the DMT that allows us for this experience that we have. And that's me. So let's go ahead and just see what activating the pineal gland could look like and feel like, okay? So if you would like to join me, just be comfortable. This is one of the many, many, many different breath works within Kundalini Yoga. If you practice that, I've heard of that. This is a very, I'd say common one, very often practiced breath work. So take a deep breath in and imagine you're pulling up energy from the base of your spine. It sits midstream, pull it up again. Sits more up into the heart, but you're still holding. And then one more time. And imagine it goes all the way up into that third ventricle, into putting pressure onto the pineal gland. And we release. We relax, and we do that again. Deep breath in, belly's out. Again, up here to the heart, and up again, into that ventricle, into that empty cavity, in there, massaging, affecting the pineal gland, and we could even hold it there as long as you can. But when you release slowly. Yeah? And let's do that again. Okay, one more time. Imagine this spiral form of energy at the base of your spine. And you're inviting this to come up, activating the gland. Here we go. Breath in. Another breath in. And the third. And activating and hold. And you release slowly. And just notice how you feel. The brain is oxygenated for sure, right? That brings clarity. We've reset the parasympathetic sympathetic system. So we've reset it into parasympathetic. We're now most likely out of fight or flight. Many other benefits to breath work. And this one is particular that speaks to the pineal gland and activating it, massaging it, and increasing actually the likelihood that one would have a magnified sense of calm and peace and connection. And that becomes a reality. It's not a fake state. Let me live in this fake state. No, it's a part of who we are. That is aspect of ourself. That we are both in this world and outside of this world. And this, our divine design helps us extend and be aware of how it is that we exist, outside of our physical body, into this other kind of dimension. And how easy it is to come in, fine, good, and to go out through breath and through our mind and through the body that's designed for that, to remind us of who we are. And as we can stay more and more connected, I see ourselves as like a submarine, and we have a little above the water, right? And periscope. Where am I? Where am I? What's going on? Yeah. Otherwise, we're submerged underwater, and who knows what we run into, right? Or who we run into, or what decisions we make out of that lack of clarity. But these ways in which we use our breath work and understand our body and how it's designed to give us these experiences, we then can choose to become, let me connect. Yeah, let me connect and just expand who I am and live for 10 minutes, in this expanded, calm self where I know that all is well and that I'm more than this physical body, that I'm a spiritual being within a physical body. And let me remind myself of that and treat my body to these moments of relaxation, of remembering. that I'm greater than this physical body. And the world, what happens is that our struggles in daily life begin to shrink. 10 minutes in relaxed state, we come back out, and the things that we're so worried about, like, they were just, the sky was falling, the sky's not falling, all's good. And then we have the focus, the clarity, the energy, because we've just energized ourselves to really get the tasks done with ease and flow. Our divine design, and that's our look at our pineal gland. You will never see a pine cone the same way, I assure you, after listening today. Many blessings.